Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is Richard Doc Owen, joined in the Hilltop Studios by...
I'm Monsieur Fire.
And...
Uncle Bachi.
And we are high on a hill overlooking the largest gathering of Alcoholics Anonymous in the world. It happens once a year towards the end of a basketball tournament that they sponsor. It's their annual fundraising event, and they are all over town. But I didn't think they were supposed to drink.
No.
The bars downtown are full up.
All I see are those trucks with all the slogans of
man.
all the alcohol.
We broadcast from San Antonio, Texas, and this year we are hosting the North Carolina Alcoholics Anonymous basketball tournament, the Final Four. As they say, the road ends here. So, it's going to be a challenging weekend for the locals, let's put it that way.
You're right about the road ends here. That's why everybody's just congregating.
Coming on down. You got it.
Got nowhere to go.
We got it. I think we got a good show for you tonight. The title of it is Children and Gun Control, or something like that, something to that effect. And I want to be very, very specific in my use of the word children. I will get into. I don't want to do my rant too early on. We can be found all over the internet as Doc Owen Show. DocOwenShow. We're on Facebook for the time being. We're on Twitter. We have a wonderful blog that is growing, DocOwenShow.com, spelled exactly the same way. We have free apps for both the iPhone and Android platforms, and it is called... I can't hear you. You're right. Doc Owen Show. You just look it up. DOCO. Well, you didn't hear him? Am I the only headset that heard the answer?
I heard it.
Okay, that's what I thought. Well, Bocce was looking like he didn't hear it. Like we got to rig his headset up a little different or something. So go out there and download the app and follow us. Tell your friends to follow us. Our audience is growing, and we're quite proud of that. We deliver truth to youth. We talk current events, not politics. There is a difference. Sometimes politics gets involved, but we talk current events and try to give an apolitical response to it, a little bit more researched and logical. That may or may not fall on one side of the fence or the other, but we don't go at it from that perspective. We always start our show in a very traditional manner. After we've done that little intro, self-serving, and those are the only advertisements you're going to hear on the show and about the show. From here on out, it's pure information loaded. We start the show in a traditional manner. Ms. Surefire gives us an inspirational quote. Uncle Bachi gives us this day in history, and then I finish it out with a leadership quote of some sort, which I don't have, so you guys take your time, and I'll be right back. Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from PassItOn.com. I've been using them now for quite a while now. And tonight's quote comes from a gentleman that I think most people have heard. His name was Stephen Covey.
Stephen Covey?
Yes.
C-O-V-Y?
C-O-V-E-Y, yes. Mm-hmm.
The author of the 1 Minute Mangler.
And also 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
So he was, of course, American educator, businessman, and public speaker. And his quote is, "Trust is the glue of life. It's the foundational principle that holds all relationships."
Trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's
absolutely.
Right.
Understood.
Trust that. Mm-hmm.
I'm down with it. Yeah, trust that, right?
That's right.
Uncle Bocce, did
Yes,
anything
sir.
happen in the past that was noteworthy?
Yes, but not today.
Okay.
Not until tomorrow.
Okay, well, then come back tomorrow.
I've got, because they go back in history here a little bit. In 1775, King George
Yep.
endorses the New England Restraining Act. We studied that a long time ago. And basically what they were trying to do is get the New England colonies to trade only with Britain. And also they banned colonists from fishing in the North Atlantic. What a horrible thing. No wonder we...
They
Slap
banned
them silly.
colonists from fishing in the North Atlantic.
Yes.
Wow.
And exactly how did
It
they
didn't
plan to
work.
police that?
Yeah,
Exactly,
I know.
it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. So, but...
It's not like
Yeah.
they have drones back then or anything. Yeah.
And then in 1870, this is something that's going to come up very soon anyway, the 15th Amendment was adopted. The 15th Amendment was ratified, and basically it granted African American men the right to vote. But yet we still had to have the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
Right.
Yeah, isn't that weird? People just, I don't know. But we'll talk about that as we go along.
Okay.
That's what happened.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
All right. My leadership quote tonight is really more of an from my friends at the Optimist Club. Okay. I got two of them for you. And I'm coming up on my birthday month. All right. And Uncle Bocce's
That's right.
birthday month.
And not mine.
So, and not yours. So it tends to point your thought processes in a particular direction for a little while, right?
Right.
Okay. Here's two. And it's out of the section called aging. Okay. The first one is from Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige was a
Oh, yeah.
fabulous, famous baseball player. One of the first black baseball players in the pros, I think. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you are?
That's a good one.
Think about that.
I'm thinking. How old? Say it again.
How old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? Because one of the things about him, everybody always asked him when he was born, how old he was, and he really didn't know. I mean, it was before records were kept. And so, I mean, he
That-
really didn't know. So,
My mom didn't know either.
Yeah.
We gave her a date.
yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know. So how old are you? Well, I don't know. It's kind of gives you a bit of freedom.
Yeah.
The other one is from our friend Anonymous, not the guy on the internet, but
That's
Anonymous.
right. Okay.
Do not resent growing old. Many are denied the privilege.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. I like that one. So we're going to dive into who we talking about tonight on the president's side.
We're going to finish number 15, James Buchanan.
Oh, that should be easy to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we're going to dive into, there was recently a march on Washington, D.C. and other metropolitan areas around the United States. And according to the mainstream media, it was global, and there were 97 gabillion people out in the streets, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
were all under the age of 12.
10%.
We'll talk about the real numbers when we get into it.
Okay.
And we'll talk about, how they're pushing it, where it's coming from, and what it really is all about. And hopefully try to lend some truth to your ears about the entire situation. Before we go there, Uncle Bocce, would you do us the honor of closing out said James Buchanan?
Yes, with pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. We're going to talk about domestic policy, then foreign policy. One of the
Farm policy. Was he a farmer?
Foreign?
Oh, foreign. Oh, I thought you said farm policy.
I might have.
Go ahead.
Just the way I said it. one of the things that happened, there was the Depression or the Great Panic of 1857, but what that led into was our economy went into slight deflation. In fact, during his first couple of years, the deflation rate was 5%, and on average, during his whole term, it was at the rate of 1.2% per year.
What's that mean? Okay.
Yeah, let me give you
explain that to you. Right.
Okay, very brief course in economics. Deflation describes the general decline in prices of goods and services in an economy.
Okay.
Which in turn increases the purchasing power of money.
Okay.
That's what deflation
I haven't heard anything bad yet.
Okay. It is the complete opposite of inflation,
Right.
but is distinguished from disinflation, which is a slowdown in the inflation rate. So,
That sounds like something W made up.
yeah. Well, in inflation, inflation is just the opposite.
Disinflation.
Yeah. Inflation is just the opposite, where there's an upward price improvement of goods and services.
So what's the date? Go ahead.
So,
You
yeah.
may be
So,
about to answer my question. What's the harm in deflation, where your dollar goes farther and goods cost less?
companies can go out of business because
Yes.
they're oversupplied.
Yes.
They're over. That's why the prices go down, because there's too much supply.
in
So we were actually overproductive. American manufacturing and farming was overproductive.
No, we weren't. The sales guys overestimated their ability
Oh,
to
okay.
sell the stuff.
Well, you being a salesman, I have to listen to you.
They fluffed up their forecast.
Oh, okay. That's what happens today, you know? Right?
Yep.
Okay. Some of the things in the domestic that you might find surprising is that James Buchanan, even though he was against slavery, he actually supported the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision, which was a horrible decision. It determined that the slaves were not citizens of the United States, regardless of what state, free or slave.
Okay.
That's what that did. Okay. He wanted to annex Cuba, and it really would have been good if he did, because Cuba wouldn't be such a mess right now.
I would agree with you on
Yeah.
that one.
He ordered an attack on the Mormons. He considered them to be strange system of terrorism. Obviously, he didn't understand Mormonism, but he did. He ordered an attack on them. And in effect, the whole Union just fell apart right under his feet. It just, boom. One thing that happened that was good, not because of him, but the Pony Express.
Well, it didn't really
began.
fall up.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Well, yeah, but it's not like he caused it. I mean, he just
no.
happened
Yeah.
to be president.
I don't wanna- Right.
Because for folks just now tuning in, we've been kicking the can down the road for the past 20 years.
Right, exactly.
On this thing coming up called the Civil War.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, we've been putting it off and just putting patches on it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
He just
it was
happened
just
to be
it was
president.
just
when it
that
happened.
it was under his watch that it actually came. But he did nothing.
He couldn't.
Nothing. Yeah, at this point he couldn't. Okay? You're absolutely right.
It's a runaway freight train.
And after the election that elected Lincoln in 1861,
Yes.
Confederate states were formed immediately after the election, while it was still under Buchanan's watch. Okay? So it was inevitable.
They knew what was coming.
It's been inevitable, like you said, for the last 20 years. But
it was like
yeah,
gun
exactly.
sales going up the minute Obama got
Exactly.
elected.
Now, a little bit of foreign policy. Of course, there was the sectional crisis that was did not allow him to pursue an active foreign policy because there was too much going on in this country alone. The entire foreign policy was focused on strengthening the influence of the United States, primarily in nations to the south of us.
Okay.
Okay? And in 1858, he told Congress, "It is beyond question the destiny of our race to spread themselves over the continent of North America." So His idea was all of North America was going to be part of the United States.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So he was very, very interested in Cuba and Central America. Was not very successful there, but
Probably didn't speak
in
the
fact,
language.
in Nicaragua, he was admonished by Nicaragua because he supported a guy by the name of William Walker who set up a dictatorship in Nicaragua. So they booed him too.
Okay.
Okay. Now, asserting American sovereignty, the British had plans for Central America as well. So they went down there and they were trying to, I guess they ended up with British Honduras, which is now Belize and
Right.
whatever, some other English. But we confronted the British and we scared them away as
Okay.
far as Central America was concerned. So, yeah, so that's maybe one thing that Buchanan did do that was good. So the British backed down. The primary issue of the time, of course, was sectionalism. The North-South thing was raging,
Sure.
obviously. Some of his events and accomplishments, of course, we mentioned the Dred Scott. He was against slavery, but he felt that the case proved the constitutionality of slavery. You go figure. I mean, what was his thinking? Just because the Dred Scott decision came down, it gave him the freedom to say, okay, it's constitutional then. Anyway, he fought for Kansas in the bloody Kansas thing, the economic depression. The North and West were hit hard, but Buchanan took no action to help alleviate this depression that was going. He did
Right.
nothing. He just,
You know what we call that, right?
indifference.
Yeah. That form of management is called laissez-faire management.
Oh.
Hands off. Just let them
Oh, okay.
fight it out themselves.
I wouldn't. I don't think I would even give him the justice of saying he was laissez-faire. I just think he didn't. He was inept. He just didn't know what to do.
Okay.
Okay. So by the time the election came, he decided not to run again. And of course, in November 1860, the Republicans elected or had Abraham Lincoln. He came into office. Buchanan did not believe the federal government could force a state to remain in the Union. So
Okay.
even if a war did start, he would have
wasn't
been
gonna- right.
No. So
Wasn't Lincoln? Well, I guess we'll get to it next week when we get to Lincoln. The first Republican president, right?
Yeah, we had
Not
we
the
had
first
someone-
Republican candidate.
No,
Okay.
no. Okay, and after his presidency, he just never got back into public affairs. He did support Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, and he died of pneumonia. Historical significance, and I'll end
He was
with
in
this.
office for one term.
Yeah, he was in office for one term.
Like the last three people,
They weren't
the
going to
last three
put
or
him-
four were
Exactly.
only there for one term.
And they were all Democrats.
Go figure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But they kept replacing him with another Democrat.
Yeah.
Okay.
How interesting. And I'm going to leave you with this one quote, which
Okay.
I think characterizes Mr. Buchanan.
All right.
If you are as happy in entering the White House as I shall feel on returning to Wheatland, you are a happy man indeed. He wanted out of there.
Sounds like it.
Bottom line, he just he failed and he just was out there. So that's why most people accept him as being the worst president that we've ever had. He didn't really do anything. Of course, that was until 2008.
Yeah. I'd like to know when the last time that poll was taken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so
that's
that's it.
So who are you?
Next, I'm Uncle Bocce, UNCLEBACI at DocOwenShow.com. And next week we'll start with Abraham Lincoln, and we'll see where that goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna try to find things that very few people know.
Right. A lot of people knew
about
that he
Mr.
chopped down the cherry tree. The look on your
Oh,
face.
it's gonna be a good week.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Uncle Bob.
You're welcome.
That story's never been true. It was apple tree. Okay.
Washington.
We did.
apples.
I did. I don't have an interview for you this evening, but I did run across, like I did a couple of weeks ago. I think when we had a little sound clip from Charlton Heston about the reason that the Second Amendment is there and why it needs to be supported, and it had very little to do with guns per se.
Right.
There is a governor in Kentucky by the name of Matt Bevin, Bevin. All right. I don't even know, nor care actually, which party he belongs to. He is simply the governor of Kentucky. I happened to see a clip of him being interviewed, and he was on a panel type thing, and some lady from the audience came up and asked him a question, and it had to do with his supposed hypocrisy over gun control, I think. But before we dive into the rest of the show, I thought I would play this back for the audience in case they've not heard it. It's a free-for-all opportunity. It's out there if you just type in Matt, B as in boy, Evin, you'll find it on YouTube, which is where I found it. So, Ms. Surefire, hit the magic clicker for us, please.
Hi, my name is Evan Davies, and I'm just an independent consultant. I'm not affiliated with any organization. I really admire the work that you're doing to help foster children, and you've said a number of times that the children's lives is most important. We had a murder a little while ago where 17 people, including many kids, were murdered in their schools. And how do you reconcile the children's lives are most important with the comments you've made to the media about it's naive and premature to talk about gun control, and that it's culture and not guns that is causing these horrible things?
I'll tell you exactly how I reconcile that. First of all, a month ago in Kentucky, we had a very similar situation. Made a very concerted effort to make sure that we removed the media circus from the healing process. So within 24 to 48 hours, you're probably not even aware, most people aren't, that I had a 15-year-old come into a school in Kentucky last month and shoot 16 children at point-blank range, 2 of whom died. A set of twins were both shot and taken to a level 1 trauma center. They lived. This is very real to me. I've sat with these families. You also probably are not aware of the fact that I've buried my oldest child. Died under different circumstances, but went to school and didn't come home. She was 17 years old. I know exactly, not exactly, it's not possible to know exactly what another person's going through, but I know exactly what it feels like to bury your oldest child. I know what the impact is on a family. I don't come at this with a sense of sympathy, but empathy. The point that I've made that's been largely misconstrued, I'll reaffirm with you and tell you exactly where it comes from. This idea, just as solving this issue is able to be solved with a single law or rule or change, is naive and delusional. And so we shouldn't allow ourselves to entertain naive and delusional thoughts. It is part of a broader construct, just as this issue is. And the point that I made, that I'll reiterate, is that if we think that a part of what we are seeing is not a cultural problem, we're kidding ourselves. And the point that I've made is this. What has shifted in the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years? It's not the percentage of guns that we find in homes. And you can give me a statistic that there's now more guns. Fair enough, I'll submit that may be true. I'm not going to argue with you. But the reality is there's fewer homes that have guns in them than there were 50 years ago when children didn't walk into schools and shoot themselves and shoot each other. That's a fact. You can confirm that. But I'll tell you this. When I was a kid, kids brought guns to school. Kids brought guns on the school bus. Kids brought guns to school in their own vehicles. Kids didn't shoot each other with them. So some things have not changed. What has changed? We as a culture, as a society, and it's very germane to this topic as well, we don't value human life like we did. We remove increasingly respect for the dignity of other people. You look at how rampant pornography is, the degradation and disrespect for women and for human life in general. It is so systemic. People of our age have not been exposed like our children have been. There's not a child in America that hasn't been exposed to pornography, I guarantee you, if they're above the age of 12. That's a fact. It is so systemic, it's horrific. And it desensitizes us at every turn. And so we're desensitized to the value and dignity of human life. We're desensitized through, and this is to the heart of what I said that you seem to take exception with, is that through violent video games, where literally you are encouraged, and you can roll your eyes all you want, man, but I will say this. You explain to me the value of a game that encourages somebody to go back and finish them off, where you get points for kill counts, and you slaughter people. We're desensitizing people to the value of life. And we see it through the lyrics and music, and we see it through television shows, and we see it through movies. We see it in the fact that the mores of this nation have changed. We see it through the fact that we increasingly want to remove any sense of moral authority from everything. I'll tell you again, we could have 1,000 sidebars, and you could agree or disagree as it relates to what I'm about to say. But in a nation where over the last 40 years, we've aborted 50-something million children, and we have multiple states with medically assisted suicide being provided by doctors. At both ends of the life spectrum, we're losing the value for life that we once historically had. You can say that's good, you can say it's bad, but it's a reality. You couple that with the fact that all these other things are changing, that we're removing any sense of authority. It used to be that you had different levels of authority starting in the home itself. Fully a third of children in a recent Pew study say that they have no interaction, for all intents and purposes, with their own parents. When their parents live in the home, they say their parents have no clue what they're even learning in school. There was a study recently and an article that was derived from that and other studies. It was in the Atlantic. I encourage you to look it up, about the impact. And again, you can smirk and you can smile, but as somebody who's an independent consultant, I find it remarkable that you're so smug and you're so disregarding of my opinion, when in fact I'm just trying to have an honest dialogue with you, based on a fair question. But I will say this. Look at this article in the Atlantic. This article in the Atlantic talks about how young people are increasingly becoming suicidal and depressed because of the use of social media and the use of these personal devices and on-screen time. All these are part of a cultural issue. In this cultural issue, if we're not addressing it, we are kidding ourselves, because it also affects this issue we came here to talk about today, which is why these homes are broken, why so many children are finding themselves in government care, which is not the best solution. The government should not be raising our children, period. It just shouldn't. The fact of the matter is, we need people in the position like I am. And I had this same conversation less than an hour ago with the President of the United States. And I said to him, he should, I should. This whole room was full of cabinet secretaries and governors of other states. Those of us that are in a position of influence and the ability to say something, shame on us if we don't step up and call people to a higher authority. And there will always be those, including many in the media, whoever the messenger is, they're going to find the imperfection in that messenger. So if the messenger says we should do X, Y, Z as it relates to this issue or adoption and foster care, people will say, well, who is this person? They're an imperfect person. Well, so is every one of us. There's not a perfect person in America, but that doesn't mean we don't strive for perfection. There's not a perfectly morally upright person in America. That doesn't mean we don't espouse and aspire to reach for moral higher authority and expect more and demand more of our children. Shame on us if we don't sound the alarm. You want to take any kind of morality and change the mores of a nation, remove any sense of higher responsibility, try to pin it on any one thing and assume the government and a piece of regulation and a rule is the solution, and then we're shocked when these things happen. We're kidding ourselves.
I liked it.
Oh, thank you for playing that. I mean, he was right on.
He was right on.
He really was.
And he was very
And he wasn't
calm,
argumentative.
Not argumentative at all. The video is even better. I mean, he was calm but direct. It was well thought out. He's obviously given it a lot of thought, and he's dead on about the leadership in this country needing to step forward and come together on what really is the problem.
That's right.
And that's the only way we're going to ever get close to a solution.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody frame it in the sense of it's a cultural problem. Now, I may have thought that in my own thinking, but I've never heard anybody verbalize. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I have. But it's just so refreshing to hear him actually pin our culture on this.
Well, it was O'Reilly wrote the book called Culture Wars.
Yes,
the
I didn't read
the
it.
whole thing with the Muslims and the Christians is a cultural war.
Yeah.
It's not a religious war. It's a cultural war, and
Yes.
and it is going on.
That's true.
I read something just today. I think there are now more mosques in London than there are churches.
I believe it.
Culture change, huge shift. Prefer not to have to deal with it here. Let's talk about this march that went on last Saturday. And I will tell you why the name of the show starts with the word children. I have for a very long time absolutely hated the use of the word kid or kids in place of child or children.
Yeah, yeah.
So does my mother, yeah.
A kid, as I was taught, and it is still a fact, is a baby goat. End of discussion.
There you go.
So don't you think that these children are also taught that a kid is a baby goat? I mean, there's things in school we have to go through. What's a baby cow, calf? What, you go through these tests. Baby goat, kid. Oh, wait, kid, what? And then you start calling them kids, and it's they're not thinking about it, and it becomes part of the language, part of the vernacular. It changes the definition in the dictionary, but it's extremely derogatory. And we've been beating them up with it for 40 or 50 years.
Right.
I remember taking exception to two things when I was growing up. And by that I mean 9 or 10 or 11 years old or older. I absolutely would come off on somebody if they called me son and they were not my father. And I don't care how old the man was. I spoke up. And I spoke up when somebody called me a kid.
Good for you.
And told them it was a baby goat. And then I got silent for about 50 years, but not anymore. Because I think it's very derogatory. And I take exception to it every time I get the chance. You know what I'm saying? But believe me, it's hard to do. It's hard to train yourself, myself included, when I want to say these kids today, to say these children today. But we must do that because that's real. That's what they are. They're children. This whole March thing. I saw on the mainstream media, they said that there were 800,000 people. Actually, they said there were 800,000 kids who marched on Washington, D.C. on Saturday.
Not true.
These are the same people that told you Hillary was ahead in the polls
There you go.
by 20 points.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no way Donald Trump was going to win. These are the same people that are telling you how many people were in Washington, D.C. There probably were about 200,000, of which 20,000 were children.
There you go. 10%. We're children. That's right.
The rest of them were unemployed or stay-at-home whatevers that were paid by a party or supporters of a particular party to be there that day and protest and make Trump look bad. And that's all it was about. It was not about gun control. It was not about the Second Amendment. It was not about the children down in Florida. That's what the media would have you believe, but that was nowhere near what it was about.
Yeah, no, it truly wasn't. I saw some on-site interviews with those people, and boy, they are mean, disgruntled. They just said, no, I'm not going to talk to you. You're going to change it. Everything that we say about the Democrats, these people were saying about a conservative interviewer.
Yeah.
They were bad. They were mean.
They're
They actually were mean and cruel.
To the interviewer.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
How did they know it was a conservative interviewer?
Because of the questions that he was asking. They didn't want to discuss anything other than the march, period. Even though I don't think they know what the, like you said, I don't
if
think
they
know what the
ask
march was.
if you call him a conservative interviewer, may I change that just a little bit? Mm-hmm. So if a real reporter who was truth seeking walked up and asked them a question that required a logical response instead of a talking point, they got mad. Okay.
Exactly.
So do you notice how I avoided the fact that it was a conservative reporter?
Thank you.
I don't think it was. We don't know. Probably because a liberal would play to their game and ask them the right question, so that because a more liberal or progressive reporter knows the talking points that these people have been trained to spew out.
Yeah.
Those of us in the independent media or outside, the liberal bubble, we don't know the talking points. So we're subject to ask the wrong question.
That's right. That's right.
But it happened. Sometimes it's a question we really would like the answer to. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Do you know why you're here?
Yeah, is your son with you, or is your daughter with you, or because they were considerably older than what we were led to believe was going to go on there. So it's about language. I mean, it's absolutely about culture, but it's also about the language. Mm-hmm. I mean, I also saw a rant on not live, because I don't get any of my information except off of rebroadcast little clips that I see on YouTube. That way I don't have to put up with any advertising. So I can skip the ad after 3 or 4 seconds. So, but there was a fella on Fox and Friends who just really went on a rant of not taking any directions from some child on the meaning of the Second Amendment. He happens to have been right. They're pawns. They're being used.
Yeah.
So to our audience, your friends are being used. You may be one of them that is in support of this movement. And it's not a movement. It's not a grassroots movement.
Not organic.
It is a paid production to make the president look bad. And the adults in the crowd, or pulling the strings, the puppeteers, and they're there. I saw the young man out of Florida, David Hogg is his name,
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
In a picture with Valerie Jarrett.
Yes.
If you don't know who Valerie Jarrett is, she is the puppeteer behind Obama.
That's right.
She was in the White House the whole time. You need to do a Google on Valerie Jarrett, and you'll find out who she is and where she's really coming from. So, I mean, they're being controlled. They're not.
That's absolutely.
They're not free think. It's not a grass. It's not. I've heard it compared to the Vietnam protests. No way, no how. Vietnam protests were real. They weren't paid for.
Right.
It was literally grassroots young people, and they were in college, not high school.
That's right.
And by the way, I considered myself a child or one of the children until I turned 18. I just was. I mean, that's the way it was. And I was a young adult for 10 days after I graduated from high school. I had 10 days before I reported to the United States Naval Academy. So I had young adult for 10 days and then adult. Boom.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Crash
Glad
course.
you're here. Sit down and shut up.
Right?
Yeah. So it was rather short-lived to be a grown-up. But Vietnam was college-age young people who, and it was very, very much a grassroots kind of movement. We didn't have a George Soros backing us. We didn't have somebody, busing people all over the place to go to protests, et cetera, et cetera.
But wasn't it backed, or weren't the Alinskyites backing it or giving them their talking points?
Some of
Wasn't
them,
it
yes.
some of there was something going on there about
some of them, yes.
radical. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But where
I mean, I lived through that, so
no, where it all kind of started, there were, but then there was an element of truth. There was an element of concern that came out of that, and that is what then became the grassroots, and eventually, filtered all the way up to. I don't think it really had much impact on when we got out of Vietnam. It just didn't, because it just didn't. It might have looked like it. Some people might claimed it, but not a fact.
it did have an impact on those soldiers who came home, though.
Yeah.
From Vietnam.
Yep. Which, by the way, do you know when that was?
72?
March the 29th, today, 1973.
Oh, I was a year off.
Yep. But today is Welcome Home to Vietnam vets,
Well, welcome home, Vietnam vets.
as of 1973. Yep.
Thank you. You deserve our appreciation.
And I bring it up because it has been used in comparison to this
Right.
show, and that's all it was a production that was put on this past Saturday.
Right.
And it's a shame. I mean,
It is.
look, I don't think that these children are smart enough to really know what they're doing. I mean, they may think that they are. It's like I almost said the other night, I was flabbergasted between the ages of 18 and 20 at how much smarter my father got.
Good point.
And so, I just don't. They're being used,
Yes, they are.
and it's not fair to them, and it's not fair. But it's all just a media circus. So the intent of the adults is to completely dismantle the Constitution. They're going to start. The Second Amendment is where they know that's where it has to start. That is a thinking person's method of defending the Constitution is what's protected by the Second Amendment.
Yeah. But can I give some credit to some of the children?
Yep.
Especially there's one, and his name escapes me now, but I've listened to him, and he knows his history. He knows the Constitution. He knows the reason for the Second Amendment, because,
Yep.
he expound. And the guy was just a brilliant kid. So there are some of them out there who really know what's going on. It's those.
Oh, there's a young man that we've had on the show, and I've been on
him
his
too.
show, Kersey.
Yeah.
And Jacob is I don't know how old he is, but he's a young man. I mean, he's a child. He's a children. He's in high school.
Yeah.
But he knows his facts, and it's not. I don't want to say he's on the right side. He has this opinion, blah blah blah. It's the point is he knows his facts, and if you know the facts,
That's.
in today's world, you're going to be labeled a conservative. But it's not a matter of being a conservative or a liberal. It's a matter of knowing your facts.
Very well put, Doc.
I
like that.
That's what it comes down to.
Yes.
And you got to keep people from spinning it into a political arena or a political conversation. There's a reason. The facts will point to the reason, and no amount of dismantling or renaming or using fakaktika logic will change the facts that the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed for the very reason of protecting our way of life from a tyrannical government, from outside forces, from zombies trying to climb into the second-story window. Whatever it is that's out there, we must be able to protect our way of life. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like our way of life to the extent that you want me to give it up, then I suggest that you move.
Exactly.
You know, if you don't like our way of life, the great thing about America is you are welcome to that opinion.
That's right.
You really are. And if it makes you so uncomfortable that you have to march or attack me because I support the Constitution, if you're going to attack me because I'm a Christian, or you're going to attack me because I support the Constitution, then I'm going to suggest you go live somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. One person,
because I'm not leaving. Huh?
I know one person who took your advice.
Yeah, that we all know. I mean,
well, we all know who he is.
Right.
Moving to Australia.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Well, it's okay. It's all good. That's one of the best things about the world today.
Yeah.
You can do that.
You can do that.
Just pack it up. Mm-hmm. Don't expect me to sit still or lay dormant while you try to destroy the greatest nation on earth. Mm-hmm. And that's literally what there are people trying to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
That's
and
true.
Hopefully it won't come to another civil war.
Hopefully not.
You know, and the last one was, this one is just pure culture. It's pure, a pure ideological fight. Mm-hmm. That the let's call. I gotta go back and pull that Smothers Brothers routine about the. Anyway, let's call it the non-factual people are taking the fight to the factual people, because the facts get in their way,
and they shut you down if you try to tell them facts.
They won't have a conversation with you.
That's right.
But that's their training.
Yes,
that's their protection mechanism. I mean, there's a little kid on the block that was standing there with his hands over his ears, going, "Nah, nah, 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 I can't hear you. I can't hear you."
Yeah.
Every time, if I happen to get into a conversation with one, that's exactly what I see, no matter who it is, when somebody won't have a conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's their only. That's what little bit of sanity that they have left. That's how they protect it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, they couldn't be a productive citizen, go to work, and you know they kind of remind me of functioning alcoholics. You know, they're functioning Americans.
Yeah.
They're not, truly Americans. What else do we need to cover, Uncle Bachi? What have I missed? Oh, there was something locally that caught my interest. And actually it came out of the Tea Party. I've forgotten what it was.
Yeah.
Carry the load there for a minute.
Something local.
Something local.
Sounds
I know
like
our mayor's in the news again. He's doing something.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly.
Well, that's true. Well, he's put out a call for
directive of sorts.
feedback on his budget. The main thing he's done is to reconstitute. That's exactly what it was. He's put out a call to reconstitute the commission to study the charter, the city charter.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
He abolished it, and now because it looks like the Firemen's Union is going to be successful getting their platform on the November ballot with signatures, he's now called the commission together to ward
that off. Huh?
that thing. So, yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
That's right.
I always thought he was a nice guy, but I don't anymore. Now that I see his true colors. But yeah,
It's amazing what they'll tell you when they want to get elected, and how far under their true selves they go, and how long they're willing to stay there until the opportunity to make their move.
Yes.
Think about that. I mean, it's going on in Congressional District 20, right?
20. Oh.
In that
Yeah.
Lamar seat,
Yeah.
former
Yes.
Lamar Smith, Texan, 25 or 30-year congressman.
Yeah.
Stand-up guy. Perfect? No. But a stand-up
But
guy.
a decent
Decent,
person.
very
That's
decent
it.
human being, and did his best to live and work in the swamp. You know, and he knew it was a swamp, but he was such a decent guy that he would not speak ill of his fellow congressman. He wouldn't do it. That's the way a lot of our generation grew up. We're probably close to the same age. And there's two people fighting it out, one of whom is telling the truth and trying to rise above the fray. And it's extremely difficult to do when there are a lot of people in the game who want to sling mud and will stop at nothing to sling that mud.
Yes.
And this is not the only place that goes on, but folks, you gotta. One of my mother's favorite phrases was "consider the source."
Oh, that's my mom too.
Consider the source. When somebody would be giving
Yep.
you a hard time, you'd come home from school dejected, and they'd said something to you or embarrassed you or whatever. Consider the source.
My mother didn't have words. She just went like that. But she'd put her hand up to her mouth sideways and bite on the first finger.
Okay.
And that was that she was angry. So, no words. I don't have any words of wisdom.
So what are you on the radio for?
Huh?
Well,
My
sometimes
cousin Lucy will understand.
Oh,
But
okay.
you know what?
Hi, Lucy.
I think of that phrase, "A picture's worth 1,000 words," too. You know, so
Yeah,
that look means 1,000 words.
Yeah,
right there,
exactly,
You know? Yeah.
exactly.
There you go.
But when Mother would make me focus on that, she was absolutely correct, because whoever it was that
Yeah.
was trying to demean me was a punk. Usually,
Yeah.
you know, somebody was just a little bit jealous of
I was gonna say
something that
mine
I
was
had
jealous.
or
Yep,
did,
yep.
or some honor that I got or whatever.
Say, "Oh, you
You
got
know.
the new Gucci." Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So think about the children. Do yourself a favor and see what it does to the reaction on people's face every time they're expecting to hear kid or use the word kid or kids. Correct them. Tell them that those are baby goats and help them understand to use the word child. The plural is children. There's nothing wrong with it. As a matter of fact, I think it'll just be one small little maneuver to start getting us back towards the right position in this cultural problem that we're having, that we've all been trying to. Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.